It's May 2009 in Aberdeen, Scotland, in an old pub. If memory serves, it was Old Blackfriars. One of those really old, really atmospheric old pubs. And I'm sitting there sharing a pint with some friends, some of my dearest friends. And we're about to go see the first of the Kelvin Star Trek films. Now, in a lot of ways, my friends and I couldn't have come from more different backgrounds. There was the Cockney girl, and I mean really Cockney. She was the daughter of a Cockney sailor Cockney. And there was my best friend, a very shy, still closeted trans woman from a super middle-class suburb of Glasgow. And there was me, the Canadian girl. There was me. We're sitting there before the film, trading stories about Star Trek, about our favorite characters, making red shirt jokes. We are so different, but all of our childhoods connected on this one thing. And we enjoyed the film. It's a good film. It's not my favorite Star Trek film. I'll tell you what my favorite is later. But it's good. And as much as I remember the film, I remember that afternoon in the pub. I remember that feeling. Hi friends, it's Sarah. So in a couple of my videos, it may seem as if I'm being a little critical of Star Trek. And there are things to criticize in Star Trek. I stand by what I said in the 7 of 9 video. But I wanted to make a video talking about how much I love this franchise. Because I do love Trek. Sometimes I love it even more for its faults. Often in these why I love this thing, I'm trying to tell you to watch it, and so I tell you about it. But you know what? You don't need me to tell you about Trek. You have an internet connection. You know what Trek is. So I'm going to focus on telling you why I love Trek, what it means to me. This isn't a review. This is totally personal. For me, it is that feeling in the pub, that community, and ultimately community with people who are different from me, with people from all over that we can connect, we can share this love of this thing that means different things to each of us, and yet we share the love. And I think it is that community that makes Star Trek special. There have been other fandoms that came after, and we connect over love of the thing. But Star Trek went there first. And I think it's in the way that the show was made. When the great bird of the galaxy, when Gene Roddenberry decided to create this little show about a wagon trail to the sky, he decided to cast his crew not from people who were similar or who represented the best of what he was, but people who represented the best of different kinds of people. And they come together for a common cause, for exploration and betterment. That was the core. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff to criticize about the original series. There's so much that could have been better. But it was the time it was. And despite everything, they planted some wonderful seeds. One such seed was the ethos of the show, was infinite diversity in infinite combinations. That remarkable gift of an idea has lasted through all of the iterations of Star Trek. And I think it is a lot of what we love about this community, about this show. And yeah, this idea that humans are stronger together, it's not a new idea. But I think Star Trek was the right story in the right time to tell it in a new way that planted wonderful seeds. When Star Trek really became a part of my life, it wasn't that original story, that original show. I'd seen an episode or two, but it hadn't really stuck. It was that crew, though, because my entry to Star Trek is the TOS movies. It was 1992 in the suburbs of Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and my brother and I are in the local video store. The Undiscovered Country had just come out on VHS, and there was a display with all the videos. And so we rented, over that summer, we rented all of them. So we watched all the way from Hell's Heart, I Stab at Thee, all the way to You Don't Know Shakespeare Until You've Heard It in the Original Klingon. Together. My brother and I. I was 12 and he was 10. And we were starting to reach that point where we weren't watching a lot of stuff together. We weren't doing a lot of stuff together anymore. I suppose it's natural at that age. For years, we had been each other's main playmate, us and the kids next door. We had put on plays in the neighbor's yard. We had built an entire kingdom, an entire pirate kingdom of Lego on his bedroom floor. It was pirate Lego, and then for some reason they went to the moon, because you could do that when you're kids. that had been a lot of our childhood over the years, and that, was ending. I was becoming the theater nerd, and he was becoming the kid on the swim team. And we were losing things that we shared interests in. We were becoming different, very different. But for now, we had this moment in common. I would watch those movies again later. This time, it was the year 2000 and I was 20, and I was sharing a house with a roommate who had become like family. Again, we were so different. I was this naive 20-year-old university student, painfully naive, sheltered, studying philosophy. And he was about nearly a decade older than me. And he worked security and cleaning jobs. He was like Ron Swanson to my Leslie Knope. And he was very kind, and he did treat me like a little sister. We got in a lot of debates. He was a libertarian and I was a budding socialist. But we shared Star Trek. And I remember when the Voyager finale aired, we had a whole party with friends over. And that finale is not perfect. There is a lot to criticize about that finale. If I watch it now, my critic brain engages. But I also can't forget how we all cheered together when they got home. How we shared that moment of triumph together. And thinking back on that shared joy, I am reminded of one of my favorite episodes in the whole franchise. Take Me Out to the Holosuite. It's the 4th episode of the last season, deep in the Dominion War plot. And yet the crew take time out to train and play a baseball game. They're a bunch of plucky misfits, all different alien cultures, coming together to play against a team of Vulcans led by a captain that has a particular rivalry with Cisco. And the misfits lose. Of course they lose. Vulcans are Vulcans. But because they lost together, they still celebrate. They still have cause for joy, a shared joy, because everybody is part of it. And we still say,
Manufactured triumph.
Manufactured triumph. Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
And again, it is that heart of Star Trek that people from different backgrounds, from different experiences, coming together to give their best to a common cause. That's why it's one of my favorite episodes. I watched that episode recently. I belong to a rather special Discord community. And among other things, we watch Star Trek together. We, each in our homes, line up our player, and someone says go, and we watch it, and we make jokes, and have gifs, and have our own inside jokes going. And this particular week, it was my choice because it had been my birthday. And I chose Take Me Out to the Holosuite. And I love that episode, but I'm not a sports person. I know next to nothing about baseball. But there were people in the chat who do love sports, and we got to share in their sportsness. And I can tell you none of it stuck, but it was a joy to join in with their joy at the sportsy stuff as much as we enjoy other pieces of it, because it's Star Trek and we come together with what we have, where we're from, and we give to the common cause. And in this case, the common cause was just enjoying a show. But it's also, it gives us community. It gives us community when we need it. This year, we've needed community. More, I think, than ever before. A lot of us have needed community. And so I'm going to tell you one more Star Trek memory. So early on in all of this, in March of 2020, and I don't think you need me to tell you what March of 2020 was like, when we were all settling in and scared and didn't know what was going on, one of the things I was doing in a different online community is organizing watch-alongs. We used a program kind of like Zoom, but you shared your screen and you texted along. And mostly we watched Buffy, because it's a Buffy community to start with. But one time I suggested, why don't we watch a Star Trek movie? And so we planned to head to do a Star Trek watch. And as it turns out, only one person was able to make it. And since there were only two of us, we turned on our mics and heard each other laugh. And we watched Star Trek 4.
Admiral, there be whales here.
That is my favorite, the whale movie. And we watched the whole thing, and we laughed, and we laughed, and we cracked jokes, and did impressions of Scotty. Really bad. But that's part of the fun. And I live alone, so I was alone in this isolation. And he lives alone. And he was alone in this. And I didn't know how much I needed to hear another person's laugh. Because every phone call in those days was stressful. But we didn't talk about the thing. We talked about Star Trek. We laughed together. And it was... and I needed it. I needed community in that moment. And it connected. Star Trek gave us a bridge. Gave us a bridge between a girl alone in Canada and a guy alone in Texas. Just as it gave a bridge when me and those folks watched Take Me Out to the Holosuite. Just as it was a bridge that my friends and I could meet on in that pub in Aberdeen, or that my brother and I shared. Some of the friends from those stories aren't in my life anymore. I lost touch with some of the friends from Scotland, and I lost the friend who was my roommate to conspiracy theories. And those losses make those memories bittersweet. But there is still the sweet with the bitter. I still remember those wonderful moments of connection. And other people from those stories, well, my brother is still my brother. Now he's a dad to 2 kids who probably make their own Lego kingdoms. And maybe they'll have times that they grow apart and come together, and they'll have their special things. And that friend I watched the Whales movie with, well, we weren't really friends when we started that film, but we already were on the way by the end of it, and now he's one of my favorite people. So yeah, he has become part of my community, and community is why I love Star Trek. That sense of community when we bring our best, sometimes our worst, but we try to bring our best together with our friends' best, but we can make something great that in infinite diversity, in infinite combination, there is beauty. And there is home.
My friends, we've come home.
But you know, my favorite scene in all of Star Trek doesn't take place on a bridge, doesn't take place on a starship or an alien planet, doesn't involve sexy aliens or cool costumes. My favorite scene in all of Star Trek is 3 friends sitting around a campfire. Not even from a good movie, but it's 3 friends sitting around a campfire singing together. And they aren't perfect singers, but they each bring their voice and add it to the whole. And that is why I love Star Trek. Now I'm going to try a thing to end the video, and you can join in if you want.
The lyrics are very simple. It's row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream.
Gently down the stream. Gently down the stream. Gently down the stream. Merrily, merrily, life is but a dream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, merrily, life is but a dream.
Did you sing along? I hope you sung along. You know how to do all the YouTube things. If you want more, you can subscribe, and the bell, and all that stuff. And I have a Patreon. All that stuff's in the doobly-doo. Thanks for listening, and I hope you love Star Trek too.
Jim,
Yes, Spock?
life is not a dream.
Go to sleep, Spock.